Good morning, friends. Another time for a webcast. Johnny W. Bread, When Worlds Collide. Today, I'd like to talk a little bit about this idea of how our arguments, our opinions, what we say, have repercussions because people's feelings inevitably get affected. And we may argue that, the most important thing is truth, lucid arguments, to help better the world, to help better people. All these things have noble intentions, yet I think in humility, we should really consider people's feelings. And that should be the approach we take when we want to speak truth and not think of that as necessarily a secondary thought, people's feelings, I mean. But they need to go hand in hand as best as we're able to do them. And let me give you an example, because I think these things play in everyday life. Um, Years ago, there was a book written called The Bell Curve, and these guys wrote this big giant book about intelligence, particularly the IQ test, and they used a lot of data to try to determine, how IQ plays a factor in people's success in life, on a lot of levels. And one of the chapters had this thesis that, in general, and I'm trying to phrase this, as accurate as I can to the extent the book would play it, to be charitable to the authors, because I thought the book was well written for the most part. And I'm not knowledgeable about all the data, how they interpreted it, but what basically the idea was that if you could measure intelligence, and one way you can do that is via IQ, if you believe in that as a good way of measuring intelligence, that white people and Asian people were superior to black people. And he used a lot of different, things to come up with this conclusion. And many people, vilified the book. Didn't necessarily vilify all the scientific conclusions, but just basically, I think they vilified the book because they somehow made it seem racist. And racist is because I think they suggested if one particular race could be less intelligent, so to speak, than another, that was deeming them inferior. And I can kind of understand why that would be the case, although it's really not necessarily so. For instance, if you had, let's say, one great race wasn't more intelligent than the other, yet there was no barometers of one particular race being more charitable, more polite, more thoughtful to their neighbor, more honest, more loving. All these, these fruits of the Spirit that Christians really want to emphasize, and Jesus would emphasize. You could have these characteristics, yet be less IQ, less less smart in the maths and sciences, just less intelligent in order to make a contribution on that level than another group. Yet I don't think anybody in their right mind would say, well, then this group is inferior just because they're less smart. But somehow, being smart is equated. If you're being smarter than another group, you're somehow better than the other group. And like I said, I'm not trying to make an argument that the data of the book was correct, but I think it was a curious thing that because these authors said that, people assumed the authors were necessarily drawing the conclusion that whites and Asians were better than black people. And I didn't get that from the book. I never got it from the book. And I know some authors who, were brave enough to at least endorse the book on certain levels as far as the scholarship of it and not vilify it. Particularly a black author by the name of Thomas Sowell, who didn't get that impression. He had some issues with some of the data and how it was, presented, and he brought some other things into the fold that suggested some other things. But I don't think you get the idea that the authors thought that whites were better or Asians were better than black people. Yet, this does prove a point that you really have to be careful of when you're trying to pursue a point in truth, that people's feelings are matter, and that you want to make clear that when you're saying something, it doesn't necessarily mean something else. And I got into a discussion about this recently because, somebody had made a comment about, what I thought about tattoos. And, I don't care for tattoos. And I think particularly people who have big, large tattoos, like on their back or whatever, a distraction. They look kind of silly. I made a comment, how's this going to look like in a nursing home when you're 80 years old? Excuse me, when you have all these tattoos. So the point was being, I don't care for tattoos, and I think people who wear them would be, it's a bad choice. But somebody came on the page and had tattoos and disagreed with me, which is fine. They have tattoos, they like tattoos, but they made a comment that I was a judgmental person. Um, and I guess they said that because they just think that if I don't like tattoos, I think less of them. Um, that got me to thinking how often this plays into everything. Because after a while, she was trying so hard to convince me that her tattoos are okay. It got much deeper than that. I was trying to tell her that we all have opinions, we all make value judgments all the time, and for me to just to go and say, "Oh, no, I love your tattoos," or "I'm going to be more open-minded to your tattoos," is silly. But I did want to reassure her that I'm created in the image of God. She's created in the image of God. Even if I think on many levels I could argue that tattoos are not a good idea, I don't want to think less of her as a person. Um, but like if I go by a house in a neighborhood and they have like a purple door and the house is outrageous colors, I'm not going to go by and say, "Well, that's a wonderful house." I'm going to say, "Yeah, the house looks pretty stupid in my opinion." And the people are probably going to get a lot of looks from neighbors saying, "How in the world? What are they thinking? Why are they making their house look that color?" Now there could be lots of reasons. Maybe they did it intentionally because they like attention. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why people do this. But maybe some people just thought, "Oh, this is a pretty house." I'm certainly not going to go, knock on their door and tell them that their house looks stupid. But I can't believe that the house looks nice if I don't believe it. Um, and this is something that can be carried in a lot of levels, and when we get into political discourse, because I think it's very very helpful if you potentially want to persuade somebody on a particular point of view, that you recognize the ramifications of what you're going to say and how it's going to affect people, because people are instantly sensitive to anything you make. Like this comes to the forefront of my mind about the show The View one time when Elizabeth Hasselbeck made a comment that black people shouldn't call each other nigger, and I'm sure she really believed that, and I think she could actually carefully give a reason why that's probably not a good idea. Even though she's a white person, she could say that and give a reason. But I don't think she realized that when she did that, she's really what a lot of black people, particularly in the inner city, are going to feel like she's basically saying, "Oh, I don't think your way is a good way. I don't think your cultural, linguistics is a good thing." And they're instantly going to get sensitive and say, "Well, who do you think? Who do you think you are? This is our way of communicating with one another. This is our term of endearment, and we do this." Um, and they're not going to hear the fact that maybe there's a lack of wisdom in the broader context of what other people outside your race might think of that, because they basically say, "Hey, this is our race. We do what we want, and you really shouldn't be saying that because you're really hurting our feelings." Um, and I think those are legitimate thoughts, that they recognize that their feelings are valuable. Now, when we make political, discussions about things of, what we think are not good ideas, we got to remember when we do that, there could be smaller things that we don't make fun of, um, but are kind of along the same lines. Let me give you an example. Um, if you knew somebody, whoever, for whatever reason, was not a woman, particular women are all into their appearance and stuff like that, and women decided one day, to get some type of cosmetic surgery. You may, find out she's going to do this, and you might try to persuade her and try to, get into her psyche, like, did daddy not approve you, or whatever. And this is why you need to have this surgical procedure, whether it's, reconstruct your nose, breast augmentation, nip and tuck, whatever these women do. Um, but the woman might say, "Well, I want to do this for me. Um, and, I wish you would just respect my opinion, because I think I'm going to feel better about myself." And you want to say, "Well, no, 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 that's not how God wanted it. God doesn't want you to go under the knife to correct your appearance. You should be happy with how God made you." Yet at the same time, how many women color their hair because they don't want to be gray? I recently, colored my hair because I was looking at myself in the mirror. I said, "I look old. I like to feel a little younger. I think mentally it would help me." to give myself a little just for men type of thing. And I do think I look a little younger. I feel a little younger just by doing that. Should I have just aged graciously and be thankful that, God's given me gray hairs and this means I have wisdom and all that? Some people take that approach. It's fine. If they want to write a paper on how, that's the approach others should take, fine, I'll read it. But you got to do it in a way that makes me still feel validated. Because whether you think I have insecurity or not, my feelings are instantly going to be hurt if you say, hey, you have pretty stupid color in your hair. But I did. I'm not gonna lose a lot of sleep over that. Hopefully I'm, mature enough to realize, people may not like everything I do, so be it. But I do recognize the fact that, when people do things, it's in some way to get validation, to feel better about themselves. And if what they're doing ultimately might not be the wisest thing, and there may be reasons why somebody can say, well, maybe you shouldn't do that. You need to tread very, very lightly on that, because if you really, care about ideas or about concepts, what good is it if you don't really care about people and you don't want to ultimately win over people and, show them that they're valued by God and that the ideas that you might be helping them with hopefully are inspired by God or godly principles rather than just preferences, which, I think oftentimes are the case. Anyway, my thoughts. Hope you have a good day and look forward to hearing you.